This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I talk about the NFL Draft. We give you our mock draft 1.0, and we discuss every pick from 1 to 32. We discuss the crazy picks, the smart picks, and what we think that teams might not do. And we give you our analysis on every single pick. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast with Josh. I'm Ben, and it's a crazy world we live in, Josh. It's a crazy world. And we just want to say before we get started that our prayers and support go out to the people in Ukraine and all those involved. Obviously, me here in Hungary, I'm closer than, let's say, Josh, but we do our thoughts and prayers. And sports is what brings us together. And we hope that you guys can watch this no matter where you're at, that you can kind of get away from the world. Wouldn't you say, Josh? It's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I would just add to that too. Like, let's just make sure that we're actually praying for peace out there and not just hashtagging, because that doesn't do anything. Putin's not going to look at 100 hashtag pray for Ukraine posts and be like, oh, I feel so guilty now. Like, let's make sure we're actually doing that. But like you said, we are here making this podcast because of sports. Because that's a big uniting factor.
Yes. And I think we're seeing all over the world right now how sports is the center and what people have gone away to get away from what everything is going on. But we hope you're here to enjoy a little NFL talk. If you remember last week, we had, so if you watched last week or listened, both Josh and I just didn't pick up on the fact that the NFL Combine's not last week. So fun fact, always check your sources. But anyways, it was still accurate in a sense because it is coming up. So, but we are going to give our mock draft before the combine, and so it could change. This is mock draft 1.0. Josh and I each have went through and we've done our best to at least try. I would say to at least think at least what we're going to do. But so basically how it's going to work is Josh and I will go through each pick. Obviously the later you go in the first round, the less it's explaining, more or less just fits. But we each have a different perspective, I think, on some of these picks. And so it'll be really interesting to talk about it. We hope you also, if you have, any comments or disagreements, comment below, message us. I got a message last week about, I forget what it was about. Was it about the Super Bowl? I don't remember. But anyways, it's a great time to discuss. And let's see what happens. Right, Josh? I mean, the NFL draft is one of my favorite times of the year as a sports fan. I don't know about you. What's your thoughts on the draft this year? I mean, does it hype you up every time the draft comes around?
Oh, man. And Ben, as Browns fans, the draft is like one of the most exciting parts of the NFL season for us usually. And then it gets to week one and then all hope is lost again. So I don't know. We're in a little bit of a different spot now. Right now, the last couple of seasons, we've been getting more towards the middle of the first round. So it hasn't been like deciding, between like a couple different top prospects. It's been like, okay, now we can kind of get into that more best player available scenario kind of stuff. But I think, and maybe your mock draft will reflect this as well, I think the Browns do have some glaring needs that they do need to address. Number 13.
Yes. I think that's going to be a big one. I think too, Johnny Gaunt, who is part of the Fifth and Goal podcast, does a better job than both of us at probably this. I mean, that man looks through film like he's an actual, Mel Kiper over there. But I will say, I think the NFL draft for me has always been something that I remember watching with my dad, like especially the first night and usually the second day. And then that third day, we would always go out to eat, right, somewhere as a family. And we're like, Dad and I are like checking our phones, like, all right, who's that guy the Browns drafted? Why him? That whole thing. Because I always think the later rounds are more fun for me because like you don't really like, could it be a D2 player? Could it be a D3 player? Like, is it an unknown guy? And who do the Patriots get that's going to turn into some legend because they just find those guys? But I love the NFL draft. So we're going to do that today. And I hope you guys enjoy. And the first on the clock 2 years in a row. Has it happened before? I can't remember. Probably has. I don't remember the last time it happened.
Maybe those initial early Tampa Bay teams.
Yeah, that's probably true.
They had an 0-16 season, I want to say.
Yeah. So we have the Jacksonville Jaguars that are on the clock for the first pick. And I actually might shock people here. And I actually never thought I would do this, but we'll see. We'll see where Josh goes. We're going to start with Josh. Tell us your pick. You explain your choice in that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. If you guys remember from our .5 mock draft, I had Kayvon Thibodeau number 1, and I'm going to stick with that for now. Although I have been seeing in the latest mock drafts, Evan Neal seems to be trending up to be the de facto number 1 pick. But like we said, we haven't seen the combine yet. So right now I'm going to continue to keep KT there at number 1 and see what happens, I guess, from combine. But is that who you got at number 1, Ben? Evan Neal?
I mean, you're reading my mind. Evan Neal, this is where my thought on Evan Neal is that I think the reason I'm going with this, I was Kayvon Thibodeau through and through. As you know, I was very high on him. I'm still high on him. He's a freak of nature. I mean, look at the man. He's crazy. But also look at Evan Neal. I mean, the dude's also a freak of nature. And I'm just looking at Trevor Lawrence and what do you have there that's consistent on that offensive line? I think Evan Neal, I think he could probably play both tackles depending on your need, right? Because I think a lot of these newer tackles that are coming through can play both sides. But I think if the Jaguars do anything, they learn from the Cincinnati Bengals and they say we have to keep Lawrence upright. And I think Evan Neal is that guy that can plug in. He's coached by Nick Saban. You know he's going to be an elite talent. And I think, again, they could go to Kayvon Thibodeau. Either way, I think they don't lose either pick. But I just think, I obviously I've been reading people's thoughts on it, but also just watching the tape. And I mean, Evan Neal is legit. And I just think Trevor Lawrence needs some blocking ahead of him just to make sure he's not going to have another bad season. And they're back at number 1 again next year. So
not a bad way to go. Not a bad way to go at all. I think, it helps the offensive line. Like you said, it gives Trevor pressure, less, it takes the pressure off of Lawrence so he can find his guys like Visca Chenault, and Travis Etienne will be healthy next season. So they got some weapons out there that are young. They got a QB that's young, and they need to get some protection there. So I can see it both ways, but I'm going to wait until I hear what the Jags are thinking, what happens at the combine, and stick with KT for now.
Oh, okay. Okay. So with number 2, I'll go this time. So for pick number 2, the Detroit Lions. Now, my original .5, I had Aiden Hutchinson, just made sense, right? The Michigan connection made sense. Now it's changing now, obviously, with me because KT's not going to win. I don't think the Lions, if KT's sitting there, they go, wait, a Michigan guy or KT, like let's decide here. Mm-hmm. I think they're really smart and they're going to go Kayvon Thibodeau here at number 2. I think Kayvon Thibodeau can play both sides, and I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know if they run a 3. I think they run a 4-3. I'm pretty sure they run a 4-3. But even if they did a 3-4, I still see him as a guy who could play inside. He could play up as like a 3 technique or a 4 technique, or no, 2 technique. There we go. I'm getting my techniques wrong. But I still think of him as a guy that could be on the outside or on the inside. So yeah, I have him at number 2. I think I know where you're going to go, Josh, but maybe you're going to shock me here.
No shocking yet, Ben. So since Kayvon Thibodeau is going number 1 in my book, I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with Aiden Hutchinson at number 2 for all the reasons you said. The Jags take KT off, so that means that the most logical next pick for Detroit seems to be Aiden Hutchinson. They need to build up that pass rush. He has the connection to Michigan, so I'm sticking with my pick with Hutch at number 2.
Now, do you think most are going to rate Hutchinson higher than KT? Because that's what I've been hearing a lot.
I think they are. Like Pro Football Focus, I think all their main analysts have Aiden Hutchinson as number 1 right now and the number 1 edge in the draft. And I'm not sure why exactly, but
what I've heard is there's a lot of the injury concern with KT, that he's been a guy that has been in and out at times this year. But again, I just think Aiden Hutchinson's had 1 year, and that's where for me I'm like,
that's a big thing with me as well, is like he has had only the 1 successful season. And then we did see once he had to go against those huge offensive linemen in Georgia that he wasn't exactly the same. Now, that's no diss to the Big Ten offensive linemen, because those guys, he had, what did he have, 3 sacks against Ohio State's offensive line? And the Big Ten has some good linemen. And he had a couple sacks against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, another perennial solid offensive line. So nothing against them. It's just, Georgia's offensive line is I think maybe a little bit more next level, and he couldn't really get anything going against them. So that's why I think KT makes a little bit more sense. He's done it for a little bit more longer. I think he's a little bit more athletic, and I mean, to be fair, we haven't seen KT go against an SEC offensive line either. So that concern could be, I guess, equally as valid. But for the other reasons, like you said, the one season with Hutchinson and then the more athleticism, I think, with KT, that's why I got him at 1 and Hutch 2.
Oh, I like it. I like where we're going here. I think it's going to be a fascinating draft this year. I think this draft is interesting because I don't think there's a guy that's really up to this point of the year solidified themselves as I'm the best player in the draft. I think we expect this guy or we expect that guy. But if you look at the last few drafts, Trevor Lawrence, obvious number one. You look at some of these guys, I think it was very obvious. This year, I think it's going to be a little interesting the way teams go. But for pick number 3, we have the Houston Texans, who I think are in need of a lot of areas. They could go many different ways with this. I'm just going to say that there's going to be a shocker here because it's the NFL draft and there's always that one shocker at the first part of the draft. Josh, what are you going to do here? What if you're the GM of the Texans, what do you do?
Well, so far, I haven't left my 0.5 mock draft yet. I got to go Evan Neal here. Whoever's going to play quarterback, whether it's Deshaun Watson, whether it's Davis Mills, those guys haven't really been protected out there. And Evan Neal's got to be that dude.
Yeah, I see
Evan Neal
you.
Definitely will not fall past pick 3.
No.
If he isn't number 1 or number 2, definitely number 3. If he falls past that, I'd be shocked.
All right. I see you. This is where I'm going to go, and I'm going to pull out I can't believe I'm doing this. This is where I honestly believe, and I say this because I think he's shown a lot here recently. And that's Malik Willis. I am saying this is give me a chance to explain my reasoning. The Texans have David Mills. Let's be honest right now. David Mills, yeah, he's proven at times last year, but is he the guy you want running your offense? I don't know. That's a great question. Let's be honest. Deshaun Watson, most likely never going to play in the Texans uniform again. It's pretty obvious. Malik Willis showed in the Senior Bowl. I don't know if you watched the Senior Bowl. That man looked like a different animal and a guy that I think is finally saying, hey, I'm on the spotlight. I'm not at Liberty. No offense to Liberty. We love you. But let's be honest. You're not on the spotlight a lot. And I think Malik Willis is a guy that can he can be the next running QB that can throw. And I think the difference between him and Lamar Jackson coming out of college is that Malik Willis has shown that he can throw more consistently, I think. So I could have went Pickett here. I was debating between Pickett and Willis, but Pickett obviously didn't look the greatest during the Senior Bowl. So yeah, that's where I'm going to go with that. Malik Willis. What's your thoughts on that, Josh? What's your thoughts on me going quarterback at pick 3? Because we all know there's something like this every draft.
Yes. Quarterbacks, especially in this class, are going to go higher than what their talent probably projects because there's not really many good quarterbacks here, and the NFL always likes to reach for quarterbacks. It's a quarterback-driven league. And I am with you in the fact that I think Malik Willis is the number 1 QB in this class for now. The combine will probably help us figure that out a little bit more. Maybe his pro day will help us figure that out a little bit more. But if I'm Houston, I would rather take a huge prospect like Evan Neal if he is there and wait till next year's QB class and get that franchise guy. That's just me. Yeah. Plus, we don't know if what they're doing with Deshaun Watson yet. As long as he's still on the roster, I got to think there's even a tiny chance that he ends up playing still for them at some point. Maybe once these court cases start going through, and if he comes off as innocent, he's back to playing football again, and an amazing comeback story kind of a thing. So I'm not going to make a quarterback pick for Houston until I know what's going on with Deshaun. But I think Malik is the quarterback that's going to get taken first right now.
I think it's funny that, there talks about the Browns getting Deshaun Watson. Andrew Berry, if you can listen right now to this podcast, can you please not do that? Please don't. Whatever you do, I don't want that headache. We've been through this before. I don't want to do it again. Thank you. That was my disregard right there, right? So next we have the Jets, and I'll start with this. I was debating here, right? Like, what do the Jets need? like honestly, like they need so much.
Need a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a linebacker, a safety, and a corner, and a kicker, and a punter, and a long snapper, and a head coach. And
so I was debating. I don't even remember who I had at 4. I don't remember, to be honest with you.
You had Derek Stingley Jr.
Derek Stingley, that's right. I couldn't remember. Thank you for telling me. totally blanked. I'm going to switch it up here. I was very tempted to go Hamilton here. I was very tempted. A guy who could play all over that back part. But I think they need a offensive lineman to protect Wilson. I think it's going to be key. So I'm going to go. This was where I was also tough because there's a few guys that I think could go. But I'm going to go Ekiwanu from NC State. I think he's a very underrated prospect. A lot of these guys that don't go to big schools, they're very underrated. I think he could play inside at guard. I was watching some of the film, but I think he could also play outside. So I think Icky's a guy. Icky, I didn't even know that was his first name, unless that's his nickname. But Ekiwanu, I think, is a guy that can play inside or out. So that's who I'm going to go with at 4, New York Jets, Ekiwanu.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. They did take Mickey Becton, another tackle last year in the first round, and there's nothing wrong with taking offensive linemen back-to-back years, especially when your offensive line's not good. I'm going to stick with my Stingley pick for now at number 4, just because the Jets did have one of the worst secondaries, one of the worst pass defenses, and I think you can come out and get cornerback 1 in this draft class, which is Derek Stingley Jr., but they could go the Kyle Hamilton route, like you said, too, because he's probably safety number 1 right now in this group.
So do you think it's vital, and in the NFL, you think nowadays, is it more vital to get that lockdown corner than it ever has been before?
I think as the league becomes more of a passing league, and we're starting to see all these incredible wide receiver prospects come up, like you've got to be able to match them on the defensive side. We've seen the kind of impact that a guy like Darrelle Revis could make. We've seen the kind of impact that a guy like Jalen Ramsey can make. So I just don't think that there's as many good defensive back prospects, and along with the fact that the league likes to favor the offense with its rules and with the way it penalizes it makes it really tough for, even if you are like a true lockdown corner, like it's set up against you. So I think you do want to have some defensive talent back there to be able to limit teams' passing games, but it's not an even playing field in that regard to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think,
the game's rigged.
Yeah. It's just called, Mahomes to, change that perspective. But
Higgins, man, in that third quarter.
Yeah, I know, right? So the Giants are now up. I believe it's your turn. So New York Giants, there's a lot of needs. I know some of the needs they need is, they need a linebacker, edge, guard, center, defense, all over the defense. I mean, not as much in certain places, but they're going to lose Will Hernandez to free agency, possibly Jabril Peppers. What do you think the Giants do here at 5? Do they go offensive lineman or do they go somewhere else?
I think they're moving on from Daniel Jones, and I initially had him taking Kenny Pickett, but since I have told you that I think Malik Willis is QB1 for now, that's who I think they're going to take.
Malik Willis
we all know what
NYC.
You think of Malik Willis. You told us, and I'm kind of on the same page as you. So I think they're moving on from Daniel Jones here, and I think they're going to go ahead and get Malik Willis, a guy that can actually make use of a receiver, Kenny Golladay, who had 0 touchdown catches last year. So
ridiculous. Yeah. Malik Willis, like I said, dude's a freak. I mean, just watch him play. He's really good. I have said this, by the way, for 2 years. No one listened to me. I said this for 2 years. Malik Willis would be something else, but he went to Liberty, because that's just such a terrible place to go play football.
Well, he was at Auburn first, and then Auburn decided they told Malik Willis, you know what, we like Bo Nix better. So then he had to go to a place, and you had to guarantee that he could be a starter, so he went to Liberty.
And Bo Nix is not at Auburn. Fun fact.
He wasn't good at Auburn either.
Yes. So my pick for the Giants, I'm actually going to go defensive end. They need an edge. And guess who hasn't been off the board yet that you had off the board very early? And his name would be Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson. Sir. I don't think he falls anywhere past 5. I just think his talent's too much. I think this is the Giants. They need someone that's got good size, a good way to pass rush. I was also thinking about going to Trayvon Walker here. I thought this could have been a possibility too, but I think Hutchinson, I mean, if you're sitting the Giants, you're like, wait, he's gone 4 picks without being picked. We're taking him. So Hutchinson at 5. Now moving to 6. This is where it gets weird for me, or it starts getting a little harder for me. Carolina Panthers, what do they need? I mean, you look at their team. I looked at them earlier. They need O-line help. Like they just need an O-line, guard, tackle, center. They need a safety. I wrote in Hamilton right here, and then I changed my mind last minute. I'm going to shock people. I'm going Trevor Penning, offensive tackle, Northern Iowa. If you watch his senior day, the dude is a freak. He's a mean dude.
Pick. I've heard his stock's going up.
He's a mean dude. So I'm going to go Trevor Penning, offensive tackle. They need help badly on the offensive line. Trevor Penning, Carolina Panthers. I think it's going to be the right spot for him.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad about that pick either. I think offensive line's the way they could go. I on the other hand, though, I'm going with Kenny Pickett here.
Oh, you're going.
I don't really know.
Explain this for me.
Yeah, I don't really know what the heck their plan is at QB right now. I don't know if their plan is Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, or Cam Newton. But either way, those guys are not sticking around as the quarterback long term. I think they would like to go ahead and get a head start on that with Kenny Pickett. But you do make a good point about the offensive line, and that actually might be something that I change later down the road once I see some of these offensive linemen perform at the combine, because right now I really don't know how I would rank many of them. I just know who the big names are. And I think after we see some combine and pro day and a little bit more evaluation, we'll know, or at least I'll know or have a better idea of who's going to be those rankings. So I could switch that to an offensive line down the road. But for now, I'm going with Kenny Pickett.
Now, what do you think is more, I think if you're the line, or if you're not Lions, if you're the Panthers, do you wait though? Do you think you should wait and just say, hey, can we use Cam Newton for one more year until that next year's stunning class? And if we lose games, we lose games.
Yeah, it's tough to say because, I don't have the Texans taking a quarterback yet, just because I still think that they're going to be very high in the draft and available to take one of those top QBs, plus Deshaun Watson still in the building. I think Carolina, they had some injuries last year. They had to deal with two. I think that as their roster stands right now, they can finish kind of in the middle. And I don't know if they're going to be this high in the draft that much more. So that's why I kind of am also leaning towards the Kenny Pickett pick. They've been doing a lot of stuff to address their defense, and they made a lot of good trades to get guys like C.J. Henderson and Stephon Gilmore and guys like that. I think Matt Rule's first year with the team, he drafted all defensive players. They got a running back in Christian McCaffrey. They got receivers in DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And I think offensive line and quarterback are the areas that are lacking. So those are going to be the areas that I think they're going to address first in this draft. They got to take care of that offense.
Yeah, I agree. I was just checking some of the stats there for the Panthers, but yeah, the Panthers were just bad. So yeah, that's the Panthers pick. I think I agree with you though. I think going to quarterback, but again, I think a lot of these, by the way, if you're listening or watching, you're just tuning in, these will change. This is 1.0. So we're going to have a 2.0 and then the final one before the draft day. So these are going to change. We'll have different ones that will differ from time to time. So we're back to the Giants because, they're blessed and they have 2 picks in the top 7. Where do you see them going here, Josh? There's a lot of weird ways. They could go to the defense side of the ball, or they could go back to or they could go to the offside of the ball or stay defense.
Yeah, I think they're going to get the quarterback that they want with Malik Willis at number 5, and then they're going to address that offensive line with their next pick to get some protection for their new franchise quarterback and go with Ike Ekwonu.
Ooh, so Icky's sliding down a little bit on your board. But for me, this is where I believe, and I just think it's the right spot. I think they're going to go for double defense in my route, and I have them getting the one, the only. You could probably guess where this is going. Good old Kyle Hamilton. I think Kyle Hamilton stops right here. I think I just can't see him going any farther down. I mean, he's a freak of nature. So Kyle Hamilton, I think, goes here because it's just I don't know if I have a great explanation why. I just think it's one of those things where, yes, you could get a quarterback. And again, this is probably going to be a change once I have the next one, but it was either Pickett or Hamilton. I think Hamilton just makes a fit right here for the Giants. So NYC is getting a little busy, a little packed full. But next we have a very interesting team. We have the Atlanta Falcons. And first off, I don't know if you saw this thing. I don't know where I saw it, but Matt Ryan's cap hit next year is ridiculous.
Yeah, what's he do? Like $48 million.
It's 26% of their cap budget. That's ridiculous. Unreal. So this one, I had a couple different, interesting where to go with this. But yeah, I was debating back and forth, like, do they go quarterback? Do they go, like, what do they do? I'm going to say they're going quarterback right here. I think I have two quarterbacks going in the top 10, and I'm going to go Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to be, I think, a year behind Matt Ryan, and then after this next year, I think he'll take the reins. I think Kenny Pickett's he's a ready quarterback, I think, but I think having a year under his belt behind someone like Matt Ryan, who, by the way, is a great quarterback, maybe a few years ago, but still was a good quarterback. So I'm going to go Kenny Pickett at 8 for the Atlanta Falcons. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'm going on the defensive side. I was looking through, and they ranked dead last in sacks. They also were very near the bottom for all the other pressure stats, like pressures and QB hits and hurries and things like that. So I think that's something that they should try to address with this first pick. And I got them taking Purdue edge rusher George Karlaftis.
Ooh, George Karlaftis,
the guy that can come in and pressure those QBs in the division and help them build up that defense.
First off, I want to just say that Daniel Jeremiah had KT dropping all the way down to 8, which I just think is ridiculous.
I don't see that happening, man.
There's no way, unless he completely just destroys himself somehow, whatever. But here we go. We have the Broncos. Denver Broncos could have Aaron Rodgers. We don't know. We talked about it a few weeks ago. We don't know where Aaron Rodgers is going to end up. Could be the Denver Broncos. But where do you see Denver Broncos going? Could they go QB? Or do they wait to see what happens in the veteran market? And do they go with a solid defensive player? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they could be in the mix to make a trade, for a guy like Aaron Rodgers or a guy like Russell Wilson, or maybe they'll wait to address that. I don't know. Maybe they want to give the guys that are in the building a little bit more time to prove themselves. But I think they're going to address the defense and go ahead and take not address because the defense isn't bad, but they're going to go ahead and fill in that spot left by Von Miller after that trade, and they're going to take Nakobe Dean, linebacker from Georgia.
Ooh.
Step in and be that playmaker, be that leader of the defense for years to come.
I like that. So that is a good one. I think it's an interesting one, I think, because they do have a lot of what they need, I think, in the defensive side. I'm actually going to go. I was going to go Nakobe Dean. Actually, was what I was originally. I think that was my original one, but I'm actually going back to the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to offensive tackle. I'm going Charles Cross from Mississippi State. Another tackle off the board. I think whoever your quarterback is, you're going to need some more protection. I think their offensive line wasn't terrible. I didn't look at the stats really close, but still, I think Charles Cross is another not no name, but very under the radar guy that could do some damage. So I'm going to go Charles Cross from Mississippi State to the Broncos. What do you think of that? Do you think they could go offensive line?
They could. You never know. They got a running back with Javonte Williams that they would like to open up holes for. No matter who that QB is, whether it's Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lockett, you want to give them a little bit more time to throw the football. They got the weapons with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, as long as those guys can stay healthy. So you can never have too many offensive line. I'll never diss an offensive line pick unless it was just a reach. But if you take like the best offensive lineman off the board, I can't go wrong with it.
I agree. So we have the New York Jets because for some reason that both New York teams got the top 10. It's rigged. The NFL's rigged. That's what I want to say. But the Jets are back on the clock, and I think the Jets could go multiple ways here. I think they could go offense again, or they could go defense. And I'm going to surprise people. You had your first cornerback off the list was, I believe, who was your first cornerback?
Derek Stingley.
Yeah, Derek Stingley, who I had in my first 0.5 mock draft. I had Stingley coming off very early, but I'm going to pass the sauce. We're going Sauce Gardner, 10 overall from Cincinnati. And I think he is, in my opinion, the best overall cornerback. If you look at his film, everything. Stingley's been injured a little bit too much for me. And as I started considering it more, the Jets, if they're going to go corner, are going to want someone that's reliable, that's not been injured, that can produce. And Sauce Gardner, which by the way is just an amazing name, is going to produce that. So my pick here is Sauce Gardner, which I think it's a great pick, and I think it's something that will last a while. They passed on Hamilton earlier. They're going to get a corner, which I think can do a lot. What do you think of that?
It's not a bad call. Sauce didn't allow a touchdown, I think, in all 3 or 4 years he was at Cincy. So I guess the only concern I would have with Sauce as my first corner off the board would be how many true first-round receivers has he gone against. I think that's the edge that Stingley has on him. But Stingley also has the disadvantage of his health. Is that something that could make him slip? We'll see what happens. But I think addressing the secondary isn't a bad idea. I think they'll do it with one of their 2 picks there, whether it's taking Sauce at 10 or whether it's taking Stingley 4. Maybe they take Kyle Hamilton. I think secondary is definitely going to get addressed somehow.
All right. So, who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm taking this is my first wide receiver pick, and we both, I think, are in agreement that Garrett Wilson is wide receiver 1 in the draft. That's who they're going to take. He's going to team up with Elijah Moore and be a dual young threat in that division for years to come. Hopefully for all the Jets fans out there.
Your Browns heart hurt a little bit there, didn't it? Getting Garrett Wilson for the Browns would have just been beautiful, right?
If I was picking for the Browns in mind, I'd be having Wilson drop down, but I'm picking with what I think is going to happen.
True. Sauce Gardner.
I hope it doesn't, but Garrett Wilson's got to go off.
Yeah, and he's going to be the number 1, I think, wide receiver, without a doubt. So, Sauce Gardner, you have Wilson. We're going to go to the new name of the Washington Commanders. And if you want to know more of our thoughts on that, listen to a couple episodes ago, and you'll hear my thoughts more or less, not really his, but more of mine. But the Washington football team, wow, I said it. Sorry. Washington Commanders. I got to get used to this. They need a lot of help. Obviously, they could go quarterback here. They could go corner. They could go linebacker, offensive tackle, whatever they could do. So, Josh, what do you got in mind for the Washington Commanders?
Yeah, so I think they're going to take somebody here to strengthen their secondary. And I do have Kyle Hamilton here, but I think that is a little bit late for him. They're just, when I was looking through my top 10 picks, there wasn't a team that had a glaring need at safety, I guess. So I could see somebody maybe trading up to take Kyle Hamilton. Yeah. We could also see a scenario where maybe somebody like the Giants is just like, we're going to take the best available player and take Kyle Hamilton. But in mine, at least, I got Hamilton going to Washington here. Like I said, he'll probably end up going earlier, whether somebody trades up to get him or someone's just like, this guy's too good to let slip any further. But I think they'll address that secondary in some capacity.
I actually agree with you, Josh. I agree with you on something, not on Hamilton, but I agree with you that they need to do secondary. This is where I have Stingley going. So I didn't have Stingley dropping too far. I think he's going to drop in general. I think he will drop. But I think that Washington, if they're not stupid, and if Sauce Gardner goes a pick ahead, you better just gobble up that talent, because you have weapons like McLaurin. You have you're going to have a quarterback at some point, whatever that quarterback is. So I think they're going to be okay. Again, I could see them going offensive line. That was very tempting, but I think they're going to go defensive side ball here. Then we have the Minnesota Vikings, who is an interesting one for me, at least. I don't know about you. I didn't know where to go, to be honest. There's a lot of weird ones that could go linebacker, corner, edge. And I'm going to go, I was going to go corner. I was thinking about going McDuffie, who I believe you said in the 0.5, you said that was like one of your kind of like guys that could really, go up the board and possibly go up the board here or there. I'm not going to go corner. I wasn't going to do 3 corners in a row, because who does that? That's just weird. No, I'm going to go actually Nakobe Dean here. I think Nakobe Dean goes here. I don't think he goes any farther. If he does fall the Browns, I would be 100% okay with that. But I think Nakobe Dean goes to the Vikings. I think they need help on the linebacker side of the ball and the defense side of the ball. So I'm going to go Nakobe Dean here.
Yeah, you mentioned defensive back, corner right there. That's kind of what I think the Vikings are going to go with here, and they're going to take Sauce Gardner. This is where I have Sauce going. I like Sauce. I like Sauce almost as much as you do, but since I do have Stingley as my first corner off, it only makes sense for me to go ahead and throw Sauce into this spot right here.
So do you think though that I really think the Vikings need to help on their defense, because their defense is not great.
When you look at offense and the quarterback, running back, wide receivers, like how can you get much better than Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson? Like, that is got to be one of the best like quarterback, wide receiver, running back I guess, foursomes in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's not an issue. So I think defense has to step up a little bit.
Yep, I agree. And now we have the Browns.
We
Cheers.
do.
Cheers, the Browns. And I believe that this is my no, yours to start out with. You're going to start out with the Browns here. Tell me what you're thinking. I think we're on the same page here, but I'm interested to hear your thought.
I do think we're both thinking wide receiver here. I do think that since you haven't had Garrett Wilson drafted yet, that's who you're going to go with. But since Wilson is off in my board, that leaves a couple different options here. Now, I'm assuming that they're going to keep Jarvis Landry in a Cleveland uniform, and he's going to stick around and be that slot. So then I thought maybe we take a guy like Jameson Williams. However, due to the fact that he tore his ACL, and that's kind of a concern for me already, plus the fact that Donovan Peoples-Jones is already kind of in that deep threat role, I would rather us go with a bigger body receiver here at number 13 and take Drake London from USC.
I actually wouldn't be opposed to that. Actually, Burks is who I think might. If Wilson goes, I think they'll go Burks. I mean, that's just my opinion. Because I think Burks is, I've watched some of his games, ridiculous. I mean, Drake London's too, but Drake London's also coming off an injury. So there's that case too. But yes, I'm going to go Wilson because as much as I want to be level-headed and think of what will happen, there's always part of me that's like an Ohio State receiver going to the Cleveland Browns is just like, it's just
Very
gold.
cool.
It's just gold, right? So I just think Wilson, he's the best receiver in the class, I think by far. And I think he could go to the top 10. But again, I don't look at that top 10 and go, is there any team in that top 10 that really needs a receiver? Like I don't, and we both know receivers don't go that high usually, unless they're a freak of nature. And so I could see him going before this, but I think Wilson goes here at 13, which again, I think the Browns could go many options, but at the same time, I think this is a smart move for them at 13. Now at 14, oh, by the way, David Jeremiah, by the way, had Careful, the guy from Purdue, the defensive end. I'm like, seriously? If the Browns got him, I'd be like, really? We don't need
George
another.
Karlaftis.
Yeah, we don't need another one. So the Ravens, they're up. They need a lot of offensive line help. I think especially offensive tackle, edge, defense tackle, you name it. They need something, right? And actually here with the Ravens, I am going to go with, and this is something that I think he could have went a lot earlier. I'm going to go Trayvon Walker here. I think he's a unique guy that can play inside. He's physical. He's big. He's got athleticism. I think he's a guy that could play on the edge, maybe not as much the edge, but on the inside a little bit. So I'm going to go Trayvon Walker, could play that, defense 3-4 defensive end, but also play inside as well. So I'm going to go Trayvon Walker, from Georgia.
I like that. I'm going with defense too, but I'm going to go ahead with Jermaine Johnson, the second out of Florida State. That's an edge that I've been seeing trend up pretty high. If you guys ever seen Last Chance U, he was one of those guys at Independence. I think it was the first season they were Independence with Coach JB. I've been hearing him talk very highly of him as well from his podcast and on Twitter and stuff like that. So I'm kind of liking Jermaine Johnson. I'm buying the hype, and I think he'll have a good combine. But I think we're on the same page that they're going to address the pass rush.
Well, I mean, we're always on the same page, Josh. But next up is actually 2 picks in a row, so I don't have to introduce them twice, but is the Philadelphia Eagles. See, what is up with all these teams having, like, why did the Browns never get this? Why can't the Browns get 2 picks, like top 10, like back to back? But, it just never happens for the Browns. But that's besides the point. The Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. I'm going to go, I think, defense possibly for both. I am going defense, not possibly. I am going to defense for both. What about you?
Yeah, I'm actually friends with the Eagles fan, and I was speaking with him before this, asking him like what they need and what he would like to see addressed, because it's like they got 3 picks that are very close together here, 15, 16, and 19. And he was telling me safety, wide receiver, and linebacker, and I was basically on the same page with all those, so we were kind of thinking the same way. So it could be in any order here since they do have 15 and 16. I'm going with Jameson Williams and Devin Lloyd as these picks here. Williams, I think this is about as far as he'll fall. I think the talent speaks for itself, and they need that deep threat guy while Devontae Adams can kind of or not Devontae Adams. Devontae Smith can kind of play the close game with Jalen Hurts, and then Jameson can be that guy that stretches the field and also maybe opens up some paths in the run game, because Philly, I believe, had the #1 rush offense this past season. And then with the defensive side, take Devin Lloyd, Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, linebacker out of Utah, can step in and be a leader over on that side of the ball.
I actually agree with you on one of those picks. The first pick, actually, the pick you just did before, I'm actually doing here at 15. I believe they're going to go Jermaine Johnson the second. I think, again, I'm living the hype. Many people are saying David Ojabo. I think he's too raw. I don't think he is. I mean, he's got talent, but I don't think he's quite ready to be drafted
also
that
like
high.
Aiden Hutchinson, just the one season for me is
exactly.
Kind of like think.
Now his story is amazing. If you hear his story about his family from Africa, it's an amazing story. And then my 16th pick, I'm actually going to agree with you. Lloyd, I think, is a guy who I watched play against Ohio State. And also I've just watched him throughout the year, and I think he's a guy that is very underrated. And he's just a hard worker, and I think he's going to be a perfect fit for that Eagles defense. Again, I still don't have Jameson Williams coming off. I'm high on him because he is a former Buckeye, but also I see the talent. But that ACL just scares me a little bit. We all know what ACLs can do. You can either come back great or you can come back not the same player. So until I see what he's like at some of these workouts, if he is even able to move, will be harder to see. So, so I'm going to go those two. But next up, I'm going to leave this because I think this is actually a perfect fit for another Buckeye. The Los Angeles Chargers, we know, are a team that is very talented. They have a very talented quarterback. I think they go many ways here, right? Like, I think I looked at some of their needs. They need some defensive tackle. They need an offensive tackle, edge, tight end, wide receiver. But I'm going to go with, because why not, Chris Olave, who I believe is one of the very underrated. I mean, he's properly rated, but underrated. Like, I think people keep viewing him underneath a lot of these other guys. The dude's a touchdown machine. He's a deep threat monster. If you look at some of the routes he runs, I mean, he still hates himself for that Orange Bowl against Clemson, bad route, but very good route runner. So I think this is perfect for Herbert. Gives him a threat deep, especially if they lose Mike Williams to free agency. Yes. This gives them a guy that they can use. So I'm going to go Chris Olave from the Ohio State University.
I've heard the wide receiver route be popular too, but I also see that hole on the defensive line, as you said, they need, and I think they're going to go ahead and take Jordan Davis here in this spot. The big, I believe, 6'6", 340-pound defensive tackle out of Georgia.
Dude's
big
a
man,
mammoth.
Super big, super strong, very hard to move. I think he could come in here and fill into that defensive line role.
I mean, I like that because I think, he is a guy that can make a difference. But I also think he's a guy that could slip all the way down the second round. I mean, it's not that his talent's not there. Let's be honest. Defensive tackles are not a guy that they go out and draft high about. It's going to be an interesting thing to see where the Chargers go, because they do need help in so many areas. Next up, we have the Saints, right? Do they stick with Winston? Do they stick with our man who gets paid $70 million to be a hybrid of about every position known to man? Do they get a quarterback? Do they not get a quarterback? Josh, what are they going to do here?
I got him taking quarterback. I got him taking Sam Howe out of North Carolina.
Wait, hold on, Josh. Are we going to be the same? Go ahead, explain your pick, because then I'll explain it why I chose Sam Howe as well. I chose Sam Howe. I'm sorry I broke the news early, but I chose Sam Howe as well.
Yeah, right now I think the three quarterbacks that everybody's talking about are Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and Sam Howe. Matt Corral initially, but I don't know. He's just kind of been slipping a little bit into the QB stocks. Not super far, but just like maybe QB4 now. So yeah, I think Sam Howell here for those reasons that you said. Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, are they going to be those dudes? I don't know. Probably not.
I mean, I've already said Jameis Wilson is going to go back to the Tampa Bay. No, I'm sorry. Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans are going to hate me for saying that. I'm sorry. But I think Sam Howell has always been, since his freshman year, has been touted as like the quarterback in this class. And he's struggled at times, but again, I think I love his raw talent, and I think Sam Howell could be the best quarterback in this class. And I'm saying that right now. I think Sam Howell could be a guy that, for the Saints, takes them to the playoffs and does a lot of these things. He could be the Jones of the Patriots from this last draft, a guy who is talented, but no one's really talking about necessarily at the same level. And I think he could be that. So I have Sam Howell as well at 18 to the Saints.
I'm with you. I think since his freshman year, he has been kind of like talked about being the QB number one. I think he did drop off this year, though, and maybe some of that was because the offensive line wasn't so good. Maybe that's because he didn't have Michael Carter and Javonte Williams in the backfield, 2,000-yard rushers. Maybe it's because he didn't have some NFL receivers out there anymore. Josh Downs is really his only weapon this year. So I got to think that maybe the lack of talent around him played a little bit of a factor into this slip, and that's why I think he's going to maybe not be that first QB off the board, but still a first-round pick.
Oh, of course, always. Then we have back to the Eagles. Like you mentioned earlier, they have 3 picks here in the first round, which is really crazy to think about. They have Jalen Hurts. They have Devontae Smith. This is where I see them getting a wide receiver. And no, it's not Jameson Williams. It is Drake London, who you had picked. Did you have him already picked right earlier?
Picked at 13 for Cleveland.
Yeah. So Drake London, I have here. I think he's a very good raw talent. I'm still high on Burks, but I think Drake London is just a guy that he's just a freak. I mean, you watch him play. He's kind of crazy to watch. Fun fact, David Jeremiah says Garrett Wilson will be the 3rd wide receiver off the board. You're nuts. Sorry. Nuts. But yeah, Drake London here to the Philadelphia Eagles. What are you going to do with this pick if you're the Eagles?
I think they're going to go ahead and address that safety issue. I think they'll go ahead and take Lewis Cine. I think that's how you say his last name. Yeah. I think that's the best available safety here in this spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that is a good pick, actually. I didn't think of that. But yeah, now we're to the Steelers. Now, many people say, as Browns fans, we're always just wondering what's going to happen here. And the Steelers, many projected this is where Willis would go. For many months, this is where they say Malik Willis would go if Ben Roethlisberger retires. Obviously, we both have Malik Willis off the board. Is there a quarterback? What's going to happen? So, Josh, what do you see happening here? Do you see them sticking to a quarterback, or do they wait to the second round, or do they just blow it and be like the Browns?
It's tough, man, because the Steelers, I don't think, are ever going to be a bad enough team to be able to get up and get a top quarterback prospect in the next draft. So I think the next best available dude that they can get here is Matt Corral. So that's who I got them picking for now, unless maybe Mike Tomlin sees something in Dwayne Haskins. Maybe he matured a little bit, learned a little bit more of the playbook. I definitely am not high on Mason Rudolph being that dude. I think we've seen enough of him to know that he is not the one that they're looking for. So if it's not Haskins, it's Matt Corral.
I'm going quarterback, but I'm going to shock some people here.
Are you going Desmond Ritter, Ben?
I'm going Desmond Ritter to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know there's a lot of hesitancy with Desmond Ritter right now. He did not have I believe he didn't have a very good senior day. I can't remember, right? Or senior bowl. Is that correct?
Not a very good playoff game either.
Yeah, I mean, the playoff game as well. But I mean, honestly, I just like the talent here. I think he's a guy that, if you want to keep Haskins as like a guy that or Mason Rudolph or whoever it is, bring a veteran in or whatever for 6 games of the year, kind of like what Andy Dalton did with Justin Fields, which I thought was a stupid move, but that's besides the point. If they do that, I just think, again, I've never been high on Matt Corral, even when he was having a great start of the year. I don't know what it's about him. I've watched him. I played quarterback. I know how hard the position is. Ritter tends to be one of those guys that on his good day could be one of the best quarterback in this draft. On his bad day, as we've seen lately, he could be one of the worst quarterbacks in this draft. But I think the raw talent, kind of like Malik Willis, is there. I don't know where his mind's at, though. So this is the one that will change most definitely by mock 3.0 draft. But I'm going to go with Desmond Ritter. I know that's going to probably shock a lot of people. Probably shocks you that I went Desmond Ritter.
Actually, maybe not as much. I am shocked that you have him going ahead of Matt Corral, but I have seen a couple mocks that have Ritter being a late first-round pick. So the fact that you have him in the first round isn't a super shock. I will say this about Ritter, though. At least right now, I would compare him maybe to having the same kind of mentality as Jalen Hurts, like being like a winner, being a hard worker, being gritty, good locker room guy, like those kind of things. I just got to see maybe look some of his arm talent, see how that pans out, because I'm not sure that he had all the numbers that you would like to see playing a G5 schedule. And then, like you said, the Senior Bowl, maybe a little bit more to be desired, the playoff game, a little bit more to be desired, but we'll see what happens. I think right now I would maybe have him around what Jalen Hurts was at this point.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I totally get that. And It is one of those weird, I think, picks that could go either way for them. But we move on to the Patriots. And the Patriots are a team that is Bill Belichick. We all know that doesn't matter who he drafts, they're going to turn into freaking Tom Brady. Who knows? What we do know is that, the Patriots do have very good success with defensive players. And I'm going cornerback here. I think it's a need that they have depending on what they're going to have there next year. And I'm going Trent McDuffie. I think Trent McDuffie here makes a lot of sense. He reminds me a lot of Gilmore a little bit, a guy that is going to produce. And I think McDuffie has the size to be a good corner in the NFL. So I'm going to go Trent McDuffie from Washington.
It's not a bad pick. I could see New England addressing that defense. However, I'm going to have them addressing a very glaring need at wide receiver, Ben. Do you know who their leading receiver was last year?
Was it a no name that I have no idea who it was? I honestly have no idea.
It was Jacoby Myers, and he had only 866 yards. How do you expect a QB like Mac Jones to thrive when his best receivers last year were Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Brown?
Hey,
I think it only makes sense if you're going to have a franchise quarterback, give him a franchise wide receiver. So this is where I have them taking Chris Olave.
I would hate.
You would really hate to see Chris Olave in a Patriots jersey with Mac Jones throwing to him. But I think in 100%. This situation with how I've had the mock going so far, it makes sense for them to get that guy that can break that 1,000-yard mark and make defenses have to game plan against.
I got you. I understand. I get you. I
don't like it from a fan standpoint, but from a Patriot standpoint, I think it's logical.
That is true. So next we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who is an interesting team, who I think is a team that's starting fresh with new head coach Josh McDaniels. They have some glaring needs, but I'm going to go with one that I think is a smart move. Let's see if yours is a smart move. Who are you going with?
Well, the Raiders, as you know, had a first-round cornerback, Damon Arnett, get cut because he decided that
proud former Ohio Stater.
Yeah, proud former Ohio Stater indeed. But besides that, they also ranked very low in a lot of the passing stats. I think they were dead last in interceptions. They had a relatively high completion percentage allowed, things like that. So I think they'll go ahead and take a corner here, and I got him taking Auburn's Roger McCreary.
Ooh.
I think that's a dude that has gone up against and been tested by a lot of top SEC wide receivers. He goes up against LSU and Texas A&M and Alabama and places like that. So I think right here addressing that issue at secondary, make it a little bit harder to pass on the Raiders could help them maybe take that next step forward next season. Instead of just being a fringe playoff team, be like a legit team.
Hey, I agree with you on that. But I'm going the offensive side of the ball. And you know who the leading receiver was for the Las Vegas Raiders last year?
Had to be Hunter Renfrow, right?
Dude, my man, the white dude that can do everything. But I'm going to say they're going wide receiver, and this is where Jameson Williams, for me, gets drafted. I think this is a place that he could thrive. I think with Hunter Renfrow being that guy that's like that, kind of the Jarvis Landry of the Raiders, that just gets his catches, gets his yards, and then you have the Peoples-Jones, someone going over top that can make a difference. So I think right here is where they get Jameson Williams, and I don't even think it's going to be a doubt for me. So
not a bad way to go, because they also had a first round wide receiver recently get cut because he decided that being a criminal was too much fun too.
That's just what happens, right? So there we go. So we have now we have the Cardinals, who I think is an interesting one. We all know the drama that's going on right there. Kyler's kind of upset. He's a little crybaby. He's struggling a little bit. Getting paid millions is already tough enough. So where do they go? And I was thinking about this, who do they get? Where do they go? I don't, this was the hardest one. This was so hard for me.
It is very tough, man, because do you try to please Kyler and get him some help on the offensive line? Or do you look at your defensive line, your pass rush, and be like, okay, Chandler Jones is a free agent. J.J. Watt is getting older, also injury prone. I think he's also a free agent. So I think a guy like Trayvon Walker here, edge from Georgia, makes a little bit of sense right here, because the odds of them re-signing both of those guys, I think, are slim. It's going to cost a lot of money. So bringing in a guy that can maybe fill in for at least one of those guys, keep them competitive in the pass rush would be a good idea.
So I was with you until my last second. I was actually thinking about putting here. I was thinking about George Karlaftis from Purdue.
That's you haven't had him off the board yet, for sure. You got to get him there.
But I decided not to. Listen to my thought process. Okay. Bernard Raymond. I talked to you about before the show. Bernard Raymond is a unknown to, I think, most people in the college world. He is a 6'7", 300-pound guy from Austria originally. Went to Central Michigan to play tight end. And he had like no stats. He actually dated someone that both of you and I know from Cedarville. But he now plays tackle, and he only allowed 10 pressures all season. Now, it's only his first season as a full-time starting offensive lineman. So this is a big risk if you're the Cardinals, but I see the potential as a guy who could play inside. I know he's 6'7", but he could play guard if you need him to, but definitely could play tackle and be that answer for Murray. But yes, I was going to choose Karlaftis, but then at the last minute, I went Bernard Raymond. This one will change because I think it depends on how Raymond tests at the combine. Could be a huge change for me. If he doesn't live up to that hype, then I definitely see him going a lot lower, and I could see Karlaftis going to this point. So what do you think of that?
It makes sense, I guess. I just think there's too many better edge options at that spot right there.
That's true. I got you.
An option too at this point.
That is true. That is true. So, those are my things. So now I'll talk about the Dallas Cowboys because it's the Cowboys and they're going to mess this up because that's what Stephen A. Smith says. So the Cowboys need a lot of different things. They need defense tackle, edge, you name it, right? This is where I'm going to go. I'm actually going to go Karlaftis here. This is where I'm going Karlaftis. I think he doesn't get past this because I think that's just too much talent. I was thinking about going actually a guy you went a lot earlier, defensive tackle. I was thinking about going Jordan Davis here, but I think Karlaftis makes sense because it gives you someone else outside of just having to do pressure all the time to go there. And by the way, David Jeremiah, I don't know what's wrong with you. I know you're the grandson of our former president of our university, but he went Nakobe Dean here. Nakobe Dean's not dropping to 24. I don't care who you are. There's
I've
no
seen
way.
That too, and I'm like, man, I can't see him falling that far either.
Yeah, so that's who I'm going with.
Every time you say David Jeremiah, I think of the pastor, and it confuses me.
Yeah.
Are we sure that's actually his name?
Yeah, it is. Oh, no, it's not Daniel. I said Daniel. I didn't say David. I said Daniel. I said Daniel. Did I say David Jeremiah? I've been saving David Jeremiah. I'm so sorry, Daniel. It's Daniel Jeremiah. David Jeremiah, we love you.
All right.
So I'm going to go Karlaftis there. Next up is the Buffalo. Oh, no, I didn't ask you. I about skipped you. Who are you going with the Cowboys here?
Yeah, I think they're going to go ahead here, and this is when David Ojabo gets taken off. I think he's a guy that can be flexible as an edge, but also as maybe an outside linebacker. And I have seen from other people's mock drafts that linebacker is kind of a thin area for the Cowboys. They did take Micah Parsons last year, but Jalen Smith's out now. Obviously, Leighton Vander Esch might be on his way out. So not that Ojabo needs to play linebacker, but I think he could fill into that role maybe as a smaller edge or a bigger outside linebacker. But either way, helping the pass rush, I think that's something that Dallas might consider.
Nice. And I think that is a good spot for there too. Now we have the Buffalo Bills, and Josh, I think they could go either side of the ball. I think they could go corner or wide receiver. That's kind of where I was in my head. I don't know about you. Where are you thinking?
I was thinking about corner. I don't know exactly what their free agency situation's like, but they did have one of the best pass defenses last year. But after watching Patrick Mahomes do his thing against them, you got to think like, okay, do we need to strengthen that a little bit more? But I'm also kind of thinking like, let's get a very potent option opposite Diggs. And this is when I think your man Treylon Burks is going to get picked.
Dude, I'm telling you. We are rolling today right now because I'm going to go. Again, I think I'm going to also go Trayvon. Yeah, it's Trayvon, right? Yeah, it's Trayvon Burks. Treylon Burks. Yeah, sorry, Treylon Burks. I just think Allen needs that second guy. If you look at every quarterback, they always have two options, whether it's a wide receiver, tight end, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. I think that's what they could go there, and I think that's what they will do. I think it's just. Sorry, I'm trying to type. Oh, there we go. So yeah, I think that's where they're going to go. Burks is just one of those guys that I think is just, he's a freak of nature. Again, I could see him going 12 or like 13, but I think he also could drop just because there's so much talent in this wide. This might be one of the most talented wide receiver groups we've seen in a while. And I think that's just an answer to see how good Burks is. Yeah. So with Burks off the board, that kind of limits to what wide receivers those that are left, really. But Tennessee Titans are now up, and I'm going to go start with this. And I actually think that this is where we could see a couple different options. They have a free agent in Ben Jones that is leaving, who's their starting center. And this is where I believe the first center comes off the board. Yes, a center in the first round. I said it. I think who is, by the way, one of the best looking centers I've seen in a while, Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. He's a guy that's very, he's a mauler. So he's kind of fits in what they need with a running back of Henry. So I'm going to go Tyler Linderbaum.
I'm on the same page as you, Ben. That's who I had him taken too. I like Linderbaum, and I think he's a top 10 talent. I initially had him going in my top 10 for our 0.5.
That is true. That is right. Yeah.
But I don't know how many teams are very high on maybe switch him to guard, or if they would like him to stay right there at center. But I see the spot there, and I think Titans are a good fit.
That is I think it's an interesting spot because I think they just need that, right? Like they just need that. I think they need that guy that needs to be that middle of that offensive line, because I think without a good center, and Ben Jones is great, but I think they need that guy that can lead the next part of what they do. Next up is the Buccaneers, and obviously they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm leading with that. That's all I'm going to say. Go ahead. What are you going to do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here?
Well, seeing as my top 4 QBs are already off the board, I don't think Desmond Ritter is a first-round talent. I think they could be maybe trusting Kyle Trask to go ahead and fill in here, or maybe they are trying to get a veteran like a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers to fill in here. I think that wide receiver is a glaring need right now. We don't know the status of Chris Godwin. We also know that Antonio Brown is not back anymore. And since Tom Brady is gone, Rob Gronkowski is almost also likely gone. So I think right here is when the Buccaneers are going to address wide receiver and take David Bell out of Purdue.
Ooh, David Bell. That's a good one.
I think having like a speedster like that kind of be in a slot role opposite of Mike Evans could really work really well.
Well, I bet you know where I'm going now that I've led with the way I've led. Where do you think I'm going? Where do you think I'm going?
Is this when Matt Corral finally comes off the board for you?
Yes, Matt Corral is not going to slip to the second round. He's coming off the board. I think he'd go here, or if the Packers would get rid of Aaron Rodgers, I think he could go there too. But I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, is where we'll see Matt Corral. I think it's the perfect kind of guy that could come in. He's got some very good talent with his legs as well. So Matt Corral to the Buccaneers at 27. And then the Green Bay Packers, the most interesting team who's messed up more draft picks than the Browns, which says a lot. So Green Bay Packers are up, and where could they go? They could go offensive tackle, wide receiver, defensive tackle, edge, you name it. It depends what happens with Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what everyone could say. It depends on what happens with him. And I was kind of all over the place. What do I do? Who do I go with? And it's interesting. It's an interesting thought, but I'm actually going to go with a guy by the name of Kenyan Green, who is a guard who I believe played some tackle as well. So it's a guy that can kind of play over the offensive line. And I think Kenyan Green's a guy that they could go wide receiver here, but I think they go Kenyan Green because one, I was thinking Ojabu here. That was one that I was thinking. But I think Kenyan Green is where they'll go here at this pick. So I have Kenyan Green at this pick.
All right. Well, Ben, I really have to fight my urge here on this because we know that the Packers do not draft wide receivers. They just never do.
Hence
and they really don't even draft players that they need, to be honest, because what they do after they passed up T. Higgins for Jordan Love in the second round, they took A.J. Dillon when they already have Aaron Jones. Now, depending on what Aaron Rodgers does, I think he's going to be gone, which also means that Devontae Adams is probably going to be gone in free agency. And I also noticed that Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Equanimeous St. Brown, so they're all 4 of their wide receivers are free agents right now. And I'm like, they still aren't going to draft a wide receiver because that's just not what they do. But it's such a huge glaring need, Ben, that I'm going to fight what I think will happen with what I think should happen. They're going to take a wide receiver, and it's going to be Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. I think if they don't do this, they are absolute morons.
So you think Jahan Dotson is going to go this high, huh?
I do. I think I'm higher on Dotson than most of the mock boards, but at least with my receivers that have already been taken. I mean, David Bell's already off the board, Burke's off the board, London's off the board, Olave's off the board, Jameson Williams is off the board, Garrett Wilson's off the board. So at least in my mind, this is when you start to get to the territory of Dotson and Justin Ross and guys like that. And I like Dotson here. Maybe he's not a true round 1 talent, but I think he fits the need more so.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think there is that need. And this is where, I think, he needs a wide receiver. And I think they're going to do it because if they want to keep Aaron Rodgers, they got to make him happy. And they tend to not to make him happy lately. So with the Packers, now we move to the Dolphins, which I think is a very interesting thing. I think it's so interesting to me of what they could do here. They need offensive line help. Originally, that's what I was going to do, right? Offensive line makes sense. But I also know they need help at linebacker. They need a running back. They need a lot of different things. And I'm going to go a little off the limb here. And I'm actually going to go with a guy that I think could have gone earlier and possibly gone earlier. But I think I'm going to say a wide receiver here. And I know that seems a little crazy, but I think they have one. I think they have a second guy. So I actually have Bell from Purdue going here. So I have Bell going to the Miami Dolphins here at 29. I think it just makes sense to add another weapon to Tua's little pocket or whatever you want to call it. So that's what I have. What do you have here?
Yeah, I'm thinking offensive line here. You get Tua is very fragile, starting to become injury prone, and I think the better you can protect him, the better. So you had this guy going pretty early, but I'm not so high on him yet, but Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa.
Oh, that would be a good one if he was still around for me. But I take risk. That's what I am. Yeah. But next we have the most lovable team in all of the NFL is the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm lying. We don't like you, Kansas City. I mean, I like you as a city, but not as a team.
Well, we don't like Patrick Mahomes' brother and wife. We don't have a problem with the Chiefs as an organization.
This is true. So they have a big thing that a big guy that might be leaving, and his name is Tyrann Mathieu. And they also have possibly Melvin Ingram leaving, Orlando Brown Jr. leaving, Kyle Long, Jaron Reed, a defensive tackle. So this is where I was trying to where do they go here? And and I was debating that for a while, but Josh, I want you to go first. Where do you think the Chiefs will go?
Yeah, Kansas City is kind of in the spot now where it's they're starting to have to pay all their players, and they've paid Mahomes, and I believe they've paid Chris Jones, and I think they paid Travis Kelce. Mm-hmm. So once you start getting all those big contracts shelled out, it's obvious that you can't pay everybody. So they got all those guys that are free agents, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep them all. I do kind of like the idea of addressing the secondary, just because even outside of Tyrann Mathieu leaving and stuff like that, the secondary was just absolutely awful as a whole. So right here, I got them taking Keir Elam, cornerback out of my Florida Gators. I think I think this is a little late for him. I think his talent should have him going a little bit higher, but just with the team needs and stuff and the way my mock's gone so far, I think he's going to slip a little bit here in this first round and go to Kansas City.
Well, I will have to agree with you on this, but not on the pick, but on the idea. Now, originally I was thinking they're going to go, I was thinking again, Jordan Davis here. Again, I was thinking Jordan Davis possibly here, but I'm actually going to go a guy out of Clemson, Andrew Booth Jr. I think Andrew Booth Jr. is a guy who is kind of went from being very well known, thought it'd been a very high pick, to a guy that's kind of went, under the radar, but he's been known as having the best feet in this class when it comes to cornerbacks. And so I'm going to go Andrew Booth Jr., who I think is going to be a under the radar draft. He could go in the second round, but I think he could go first round here, late first round. So that's who I'm going to go with. And then we have the Cincinnati Bengals, the team that made it to the Super Bowl, that messed up their pick. They drafted a kicker. And I'm sorry, Jared, I am so sorry, but I told you, I said they needed to draft a lineman, and you didn't listen to me. You got Jamar Chase, great, but you didn't get a lineman. So that's all I'm going to say. And I thought, how am I going to lead into this? Josh, normally this would be my turn, but I'm going to ask you to go because I want to explain mine. So go ahead and go. Who do you think the Bengals will draft here?
Sure. I mean, do we really think they're going to take anybody but an offensive lineman at this point? So I got them taking Charles Cross, tackle out of Mississippi State. Maybe not him specifically, but they're definitely going to take an offensive lineman. At least in my mock right now, this is the best available lineman they can choose from. So we're going Cross here.
Well, I would say that I'm with you because I think if they take anyone else outside of it, they're just
this is like the Packers with the wide receivers, right? The Packers just don't take receivers. The Bengals apparently don't take offensive linemen, right?
Yeah, like I think it's just like it's so yeah, anyways, I'm just going to stop saying anything. But who I'm going here, and I think it's going to be one that's also obvious, but I'm going to stay in state, Piet Fier out of the Ohio State University, a guy who I think has been weird. He's been in the top round before. They project him as a first round at times this year. He's dropped to like a second round, third round pick. Now he's back up to the early second, late first. So I think Petit Friere, I can never say his name right, but Petit Friere from Ohio State, I think could be a great pick here for the Bengals. My brother would love that. I mean, he's probably laughing about it right now. But I think, I don't know. What do you think of that? Do you think that is a reach, or do you think that's a guy that, because at this point I have all the good tackles off the board. I mean, do you just go ahead and go for it and say, take a risk?
Yeah. In your spot, like you definitely got to take the best offensive lineman available. I think if you pass offensive line again, like you're just asking for it. So
yeah.
In your scenario, like I don't know who this guy is. You said he's from Ohio State, so
I'll give you his stats here because I think he's a guy that was in the top. He was in the top kind of he was a guy that was in kind of the top look at. Mumford was the guy for Ohio State. Everyone talks about Mumford. Do you know who Thayer Mumford is? I don't know if you do, but he's a guy that played tackle, then moved to guard. So he was kind of like that guy. Well, if I can bring him up here, I'm trying to find him. Nicholas Petit Frere. He's 6'5", 315, a guy that has got long arms. He's a junior this year, and I think he's a guy that could do pretty well. Again, I didn't really know where to go here, and he's kind of a guy that's been up in the second round, first round talk. So Petit Frere could be a second round, or he could be here. I have him going here. So that's what I have there. But the last pick of our mock draft, 1.0, everyone, give it a round of applause. We did an amazing job so far. We are on our last pick. Josh, for the Lions, which is weird to say.
The Lions finally got a 32nd pick.
They did it. It's all thank you to Matthew Stafford. You can thank him, Lions fans. So where are the Lions going? They could go so many places.
Dude, yeah, they could go so many ways. I played around with a lot of different options here. I haven't taken Hutchinson at number 2, so sticking with kind of the line, I think that's kind of where everything starts is in the trenches. So Kenyan Green, guard out of Texas A&M.
You have that's the one guy I can't believe you haven't going this far down. Honestly, the dude is a guy that could play both in and out, and I couldn't.
It's like I told you, Ben. I really don't know how to rank many of these offensive linemen at this point.
Yeah.
So
until the combine comes, I think we'll have a better idea for these linemen and see what they do. But I'm sticking with the interior, but defensive line, and this is where Jordan Davis falls.
When Jordan Davis is off, all right.
You get KT and you get Jordan Davis.
Man,
that's a big defensive line, and so I think Jordan Davis is the guy that can go. And again, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this draft. And again, if you're watching, this is 1.0. So this is 1.0 of our draft. We are excited. And so, yeah, this is 1.0. If you are watching this and going, I hated that pick. That's great. That's what we want. We want that.
I mean, I hate some of my picks too.
So, and if you didn't know, what Josh and I did not know each other's picks before this. So this was us hearing kind of what each other are thinking. So Josh, how do you rate your first 1.0 mock draft here? Should you give it like a B or a C or an A?
We're gonna give it a C+.
C+. I would have to give mine like a B minus. I feel solid about my top 10. I feel terrible at the rest of them.
I don't think that Kyle Hamilton is going to fall as far as I had him. I don't know how to rank my offensive linemen. There's just a couple things like that I'm just like, this is not good.
Hey, that's why it's 1.0. That's why we have another chance. So it probably after the combine happens. See, I'm not saying when it happens because I'll mess it up again. So when the combine happens, in probably 2 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks or so, we will have our second mock draft, kind of an updated one. And then right before the draft, we will have a third mock draft, and then that will be our final one. And we'll kind of give our thoughts on the mock draft, on the draft itself, obviously that Sunday after the draft, which will be really fun to talk about, I think. So I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Baseline Podcast with Ben and Josh. And again, give us your comments below. Let us hear your thoughts about who you like, who you didn't like, and all that. If you like listening on Spotify or any of those, make sure you favorite it, keep it there so you can see it. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe notification bell and the subscribe button, all the buttons. I get them all mixed up. Anyways, hit those so you can see all the new podcasts. My podcast with my wife just came out this past week. So if you want to hear what it's like being married to me, it's terrifying. That's all I can say. And then if you also enjoy sports, I actually here in about 2 weeks, I will have an interview with Titus Dean, who is a basketball player at Cedarville University, who is also a rapper. And so you get to hear his testimony of what God has done. He was also at Liberty and then transferred to Cedarville. So that will be coming out here in the next few weeks. It's going to be a really, really interesting conversation. So hope you guys have a great week. Have a blessed one and stay safe out there. Until next time, we'll see you.